Thank you. So, as I said, that's a very brief introduction to what we're doing. And I want to say a few more words before I turn it over to my talented colleagues. I hope that Evelyn Patton, Chase, do you know if she's online? Okay. I am joined today, I hope, by three people. The first, and on my right, is Evelyn Patton, who was born in Sewanee and grew up there. She was a graduate of the university's preparatory school, one of the first African-American graduates, the Sewanee Academy. She later moved back to Sewanee and is today the medical office senior patient coordinator for the university's Wellness Center. She's also chair of the St. Mark's Community Association, which is runs the community center in the neighborhood I showed you earlier. We're also joined by Laura Battaglia. Laura is an assistant professor of interior design in the School of Arts at VCU. She's also taught at Hampton, North Carolina State, and other institutions, and she has more than 20 years of practical professional experience in design. The third person joining us and the member of our team is Kevin Jones, who's an associate professor of practice in the School of Architecture at Virginia Tech. His practice is at the intersection of teaching, architectural practice, and community engagement. And he's worked with urban and rural communities on community-oriented design projects. So these are the three people who are doing the heavy lifting. I'm just the director of the Roberson project. They're the ones, they are the talent and the energy behind the Sewanee Praises project. So this is an unusual team. So we're in Tennessee, and yet our two principal design centers or partners are in Virginia. How did that happen? Well, it's actually a Lemon Project story, because about 18 months ago, Jody Allen director of the Lemon Project, did me the favor of introducing me to Bert Pennock. Bert, as many of you probably know, was the principal architect of the Hearth Project. And Bert is a friendly and generous and very likable person, in addition to being an incredibly talented architect. And his friendliness, because of his friendliness, I later turned to him a few weeks after meeting him and asked him to recommend some people in design and architecture who could help us with this project. And he was the one who connected me with Laura Battaglia and Kevin Jones and their students as well. So they are the principal design partners in this project, the ones who will work with their students in working with our community in Sewanee to bring this project to fruition. We hope by the end of the present calendar year. So let me very quickly go over kind of the schedule that we have and what we've already done as we're trying to get this project underway. Our work began last summer of 23, when Laura and Kevin both paid a visit to Sewanee, met with community members. We had a big Sunday dinner and a very festive time as they met people in the community. We showed them our campus, told them our story. And they took the bait, and we've been planning on this project ever since. So in the fall, our conversations intensified, such that this semester, the spring semester, their students at Virginia Tech and at VCU are already engaging in creative projects related to contributing to the well of ideas that will go into this memorial project. This summer, that kind of work with their students will intensify, but the period of greatest energy and concentration will be in the fall, the coming fall semester, when their students will pay multiple visits to campus, meeting, and more community dinners, I'm sure, but also community charrettes and other ways of bouncing ideas and developing the ideas that people in the community have about what this project should be, with the anticipation that the advanced design concept will be submitted to the community in Sewanee by the end of the fall semester, giving us time to raise money for it in the spring and hope to break ground on the project at some point in 2025. But I just want to say a couple more quick words about this project as it moves ahead, because as I said, we're at a very early stage of it, and that is important for this reason. So this project is not focused just on the ultimate end, where we hope to be at the very end of it. Rather, we think the journey is as important as the destination we're trying to reach. And so for us, this is a memorial project that's also a digital humanities project with an important public interface. So we will be exposing and sharing the process in real time throughout the rest of the calendar year on our website, SewaneePraises.org, which you can visit even today. It's in a rather preliminary stage, but we will be building that up, and that will be our way of showing people the process as it moves along. Our process of working with our community partners and of developing the ideas over time. So this way, our multifarious partners, community, university, students, design, can be witnessed in action and close to real time. And the building toward the building, not just the building itself, can serve as a witness to others, as an example of others, as you can join us in the learning process as we confront the challenges, the difficulties, but also, we hope, experience the rewards and then the hopes for healing and repair in our fractured community, but most of all, for the preservation and the sustaining of Sewanee Black history. So, so I'm hoping, Chase, do we know if Evelyn is here? And she is having to travel today. She was hoping to be here, but we're getting her on the road somewhere, I think near Louisville, Kentucky. That's her? Okay, Evelyn, do you want to say a few words?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me, Woody?
Oh, we can hear you.
Hello, I'm Evelyn, as Woody said, and I was born in Sewanee in 1963, so I'm one of the younger of the 14 that are still left in the community. I don't know what it is that you all would like for me to speak about, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, I was hoping you would say, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why this project is important to people like yourself who have such deep histories in the community.
Well, like I said, I was born in Sewanee in 63. My father worked for the university. My mother was employed by professors and people that worked at the university. And I think growing up in Sewanee was what molded and made me be the person that I am today. The opportunity that they had back then gave them an earnest living. It taught us how to, it gave us the morals and the work ethic and the standards that we as a family know now. Had it not been for my dad being able to come to Sewanee and build a home and provide for his family, he would have probably just been a Black man lost in the streets. He came from a very poor family, and he strived to do better for himself. He married my mom, and all he wanted to do was take care of her and the kids, and that is what he did. Thanks to Sewanee giving him an opportunity to do that type of work. Unfortunately, as we have grown, most of the people that were born and raised in Sewanee have either passed or they left because they wanted to make better for themselves. People decided they wanted to go into the military. They also wanted to get college educations. And so back then, we were only allowed to do cleaning jobs, cooking jobs, yard work. We didn't have any of the prestigious jobs in the offices or teaching or any of those things. So for me, it is important that people know that Sewanee has become a diverse university. And my hopes is that people will move back. People will come there to get educated. People will come there to do jobs that they weren't allowed to do or qualified to do back then. I love Sewanee. It's a beautiful place. It's a safe place. And again, they have the most beautiful sunsets and sunrises, and there's so much to do there. I think if people will allow themselves to come back, they can see that Sewanee is a diverse place. And it's no longer as it was in 1963, nor is any other place in the world. But if that doesn't happen, we have to preserve the history that has already been made there. And that is what we're hoping to do with the monument.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. You're hanging on with us, aren't you?
Just barely.
Thanks. Well, and now I want to turn over the mic to our Laura Battaglia.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I'm Laura Battaglia, and I want to talk a little bit about what I call an empathic approach. I'm an educator and an architect. As Woody discussed, the why of the project, just to reiterate, this project will broaden the historical narrative of a small town in the rural South through research and the design of an outdoor classroom for the St. Mark's community in Sewanee, Tennessee. And the where, located adjacent to the university, is the St. Mark's neighborhood. Once called the Bottom, St. Mark's was home to Sewanee's Black citizens who provided indispensable physical labor for the university and built for themselves an active community and family life, all of which were supported by deeply cherished neighborhood facilities. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about site. There's nothing there. All of these things are gone. And I want to talk a little bit about what I do teaching interior design. Because with our students, usually something is always there. There's typically 4 walls and a roof, some sort of building, some sort of perimeter to which we work within. And to begin our project, we usually study that building, when it was built, the context, and look at how things like the light comes through the windows. So what do we do now? There's nothing there. And so I've been developing what I'm calling an empathic approach, because what we do have is we have memories. So we're working with the community to understand through their memories, through their stories and their histories, so that we can make a project that is for them. This is a little, what I call a vignette. I had the students start off by making 9 tiles of their impressions of Sewanee, and they did a lot of jigging. They did a lot of research. This was before they met the community. And Lily Corbin says this about her vignette. Taken from architect Kevin Jones' notes, this simple phrase explains the entirety of the project. We aren't designing for ourselves, but for a community left unnoticed. So we should take the time to understand their history. So there are many definitions of empathy. It's from the Greek word which means into, and pathos, which means passion or feeling. It can also be described as a principle of human-centered design. And the capacity to experience another person's feelings and a process which aims to serve. It's hard for me to see back there, and I don't have this written, but it's about relationship. And then the bottom one is mentioning technique. And so one thing that I've learned is that empathy is something that can in fact be taught. It's a skill that you can learn. And so my goal as an educator is to teach students how to think and design with empathy. And prior to my class at VCU, I did some work over the summer. I call it research, and the research really was about interviewing educators from these two projects about reconciliation and remembrance, the memorial to the enslaved laborers at the University of Virginia, and the hearth at the College of William and Mary. And they really do serve as examples of how design can be a catalyst for the unveiling of hidden histories. And they also tell the story of essential student engagement, providing design students an opportunity to learn a methodology rooted in community-engaged design and an empathic approach. So just a couple things that stood out. Reconciliation and remembrance projects pose an interesting dilemma for those who are not descendants of slaves. And this is Kurt von Dake, head researcher at the UVA Memorial, and he reflected on how one lecture from Reginald Butler began his lifelong journey to understand that, quote, "The local and particular is a wonderful window for a broader history of slavery." And this is Greg Bleem, a landscape architect, described working on the UVA Memorial as something completely different, involving community meetings and working with the public as partners. As contrast to his other project work, he did not have any preconceived notions of what the design could be, stating that he had, quote, "no idea," and that it felt like it was, quote, "everyone's project, yet no one's project at the same time." Student involvement was essential at the core of the College of William and Mary's Memorial. As Jody Allen described how a few students were the first to demand a reconciliation resolution, Susan Kearns reflected that how that fact gave the project a, quote, "deep credibility that would have been lost at certain administrative levels." So parallel to that research, I was engaging students last spring semester in a project of reconciliation, remembrance, and celebration. And this was for the Wyandotte Association of Virginia. It's a group that, quote, "promotes the research in and sharing of Black, African and American African, and Red, Native American or Indian history and culture, and the places where they intersect." This is just a picture of their final project. But to introduce them to this idea of designing with an empathic approach, my colleague and I asked them to design a triptych or three-part piece based on their interpretation of the hearth at William and Mary. Interpretations were based on individual research and visits to the site. And then over the summer, I circled back around and interviewed the students and asked them what they thought of all of this. One student, Noor Mahmood, emphasized the importance of the unknown laborers by carving those words in her model. She stated that being on site influenced her decisions. Quote, "When I was sitting at the hearth, it was creating a harsh shadow, reminding me that the memorial was built for people that we don't know." And with their understanding of the Wyanoke, and they did have many opportunities to communicate with the Wyanoke, it was extremely important to our work. They actually developed symbolism that had deep meaning because of the connection to their culture and heritage. Andrew Grider, for instance, stated that his space was inspired by the ritual West African dance of, quote, heart to ground, heart to drummer, and heart to sky. And he ended up considering that in his final design. The site for our project was our own building at VCU, the ground floor courtyard, and it represented what the Wyanoke called the perfect place for a community of people who make wherever they are their sacred home. And one student, Zara Jalajal, found resonance stating, quote, "I know that VCU was built on tribal land, and at the end of the day, the land was theirs." So based on a similar approach this semester, my students are working on Sewanee Praises. We are really excited. And we're trying to take a similar empathic approach. It encompasses two projects, the first composed of research activities and communication, and the next being the ideation, or the resulting in a conceptual design for the memorial. And I just want to mention that both, I'm sure Kevin would agree that this act of making is really powerful tool for us, for interior design students, for architecture students. It makes things intentional and also allows you to interpret things in a new way. And so one of the first things we did up top was that we had the students write letters, the old-fashioned kind. And we sent them through snail mail to the community members. They were each paired with a particular member. And then we also asked the students their initial impressions of Sewanee, Tennessee. And our students come from many places, but none of them hails from Tennessee. So, this was interesting because it marked the beginning of a journey of empathic discovery. Each student was then paired with the community member or formal community member, and they began their relationship through writing. Communication expanded to the digital world, and conversation was sparked by questions to community members such as, what is one word that you would use to describe Sewanee? Students came to the community without assumptions and discovered some things through the discussions. We ended with the question, what is your hope for this project? And then the students were asked to begin their research and design their 9 vignettes. These are some of the hopes, by the way, that were captured from that initial Zoom meeting. And this is one, I think, powerful example of the vignettes. The student, Elena Curtison, calls this Deep Histories, Erased Memories Reborn. And she says, the community of St. Mark's has an extensive history, that of which we are here to explore and uncover. The history has been consistently overwhelmed by the history and prominence of Sewanee University. Through this, many memories and stories. I lost my page. All right, I'm going to go rogue. Oh, shoot.
Rogue is okay.
But I have their quotes. Oh, give me 1 second. All right. I'm going to go rogue. And so you can see here on the left, this is what she pinned up on the wall. And one of the things she has pinned up is a letter. So I again go back to this idea that that using different papers, that using different inks, creating art projects in a certain way. Here you can see that the actual pictures are starting to fade. So it's a very powerful reminder of what she's trying to get at. And then this project we just finished on Wednesday was to design a set of 3 tiles, or I call them interpretive maps, one about the people, one about the place, and then a concept. And these were really to celebrate their community member. So you can see here on the left, this is Elena Zagorodna, and she had Jimbo Hill as her community member. And she wanted to represent Jimbo and his iconic bow tie to just sort of celebrate his love for fashion. And then on the right, you can see this topographical map where she's explaining how important the topography is. And by using these golden rods, she's expressing the fact that the university still has a lot of prominence and casts shadows over the St. Mark's. Here are 3 more. On the, let's see, your left is one that is supposed to celebrate Carl Hill. And he's the great grandson of Willie Six, who was kind of a celebrity at St. Mark's. And he was all about athletics. So she did this beautiful work which commemorates that. And with the number 6 being the most prominent. And up at the top, Lily Corbin wants to talk here about the erasure and the unveiling of the history. And at the bottom, Gail Lobaton worked with the method of figure ground to really underscore the fact that behind everybody, this group of community members is the foundation, that they're always there. And this one in the middle is interesting because these little pegs actually move from the state of Tennessee to other places, symbolizing the fact that, like Evelyn was saying, a lot of people have moved away, but their heart is always still in Sewanee. And again, through making and intentionally picking something like strings to investigate as a tool, this particular student, Camilla Rosenbach actually is describing using strings to describe things like roots, family roots. And then also on the right, how it can actually be bounding and confining as well. And the last slide I have of this project is Elena's work, Faded Memories. And her 3rd tile I thought was really gorgeous. She started to add color. And she basically said, well, this tile is representing that every one of these community members is going to contribute to this final design, that it's going to elevate and lift up and inspire. And so it's funny, I have this slide, it says conclusions, but it's actually that we're just at the beginning. And thank you all.
Really close. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Jones, and I teach and make buildings as well. I'm really excited and privileged and kind of humbled to be here. And I'm gonna, unlike Laura, I'm gonna start, continue, and finish Rogue from the get-go. So, thank you so much for your attention and joining us this morning to talk about this work in progress. Sort of a check set, as we call it in the architecture business. Any design people, architecty people? Good. I asked them if we could skip lunch and I give you a 3-hour lecture on architecture if you want. Probably not, but I wanted to sort of introduce the work that sort of the Virginia Tech side of these things and speak a little bit about our engagement so far and what we're looking ahead to. But wanted to start by kind of cluing in the title of our talk this morning, this idea of sort of designing and healing, and that maybe these are sort of related things. It sort of struck me that both the outcomes of something, I visited or attended the UVA memorial presentation this morning, the kind of outcome of an incredibly powerful work of design, but also the process can be sort of an act of healing as well, which is sort of striking me, and it's certainly being put forth in my students. I thought I'd just give a little introduction sort of about how we teach, the kinds of things we talk about, similar to the Laura's talk about pedagogy and sort of empathy and things. So I teach in the School of Architecture, Virginia Tech. It's 4 hours that way. Any Hokies? One, yay! Yeah, so I would love crossing Virginia because I get to experience sort of the different sort of zones. So it starts out hilly and mountainy where I am, and it's pretty flat here, but happy to be here. I thought I'd explain a little bit about what we do by taking 3 pictures of some of my 5th year thesis students' desks 2 days ago. So this is Maya's desk, and she's spending a year looking at rethinking sort of housing that can grow and evolve with people as they live. So her desk is a big mess, but it's full of interesting stories. Lots of wood, toxic glue, notes to self, sort of the collection of things, 2 monitors for when you're doing computer work, you know, the bag of snacks. If you've ever been in an architecture studio, there's sort of the zone of food and drink that's on everybody's desk. So yeah, sort of a cutting mat. And she's working about 5 feet away on a model that's about this big, you know, and she's cast plaster and she's cutting 1,000 little wood sticks and gluing them carefully, and trying not to stab herself with chisels and doing all kinds of amazing things. But this act of making that Laura spoke about, it's a way of knowing and a way of engaging with the world, and part of the sort of maybe at the heart of community engaged design work to sort of get out and do real things and sort of make those things. This is Liz's desk. She calls it Liz Brain. That's Liz's hand on the left. There's a Christmas tree left over because it'll be there until they move out in May, because that's a thing. That green thing that says IAWA is a screen print. So for hand pulling screens, the IAWA is the International Archive of Women in Architecture, which is housed at Virginia Tech, and they have an exhibition and a keynote talk yesterday, actually. So she was hand making screen prints to advertise. That is all of her thesis work in the pile, kind of stacked up. That frame is a part of the exhibition she's working on. That pot that you can see with the hammer and the brush sticking out of it, she made that in the pottery lab. So we have computers and do all those kinds of things. We have laser cutters and 3D printers. We also have staffed metal shops, wood shop, a dark room for those that remember that pictures are things on paper that you make as opposed to printing from your phone. Still have a dark room, textile lab, pottery studio. You can go and throw a pot. You can work with clay. You can screen print. So this idea that we can investigate architecture and design through lots of modes is really at the core of what we do. This is Issa's desk. So that's a silicone mold for casting terracotta. In the stack of books, she's spending her time working on ways of sort of the living and the dead communing with one another through architecture. So she's got a stack of books. That one's The Denial of Death. She's working on sort of a beautiful set of landscapes, sort of memorial landscapes, unrelated to Sewanee, but sort of very, very related to the work that we're doing, actually. You know, Ace hardware bag. That's a model of her idea, the one that looks like someone smeared chocolate sauce. So I was struck by Laura's work, right? There's this sort of beauty in the kind of big mess that we make, and we're looking forward to sort of making that big mess this fall down in Sewanee. I think an important distinction we make down in my neck of the woods is that we're not engaged in architectural education, but in the education of architects, which sort of foregrounds the student, the person, the architect, the designer, as opposed to kind of their output. And I think this sort of human-centered, student-centered thing is very much at the core of community engaged and sort of interest, impact-oriented design work like the Sewanee Praises project. So we sort of always talk about the education of the architect. You know, you will learn about architecture, but it's really about the person, and having these facilities and letting people make these things is really about that. So we're going to be operating this with Woody and Laura and the team under a new program. We're just sort of kicking off this semester called the Appalachian Futures Lab, which is fourth year students in a 5-year program. So they're kind of pretty seasoned students. And it's the idea that can we tackle design and building and the built environment and the stories and histories in place of Appalachia kind of as our lab. I think we have an idea of, can we be affordable and accessible? Can we work in our backyard? Of course, Appalachia goes from Georgia all the way to New York. So this semester we're working in a small coal town about an hour and a half from Blacksburg called Pocahontas. But we took sort of an 8-day tour in 2 vans, 14 of us in 2 vans, 1,200 miles in 5 states. And we visited down to Tennessee. We're really interested in this intersection of sort of teaching and education and community engagement. So this is real people, real projects, you know, students learning by doing, community members getting the benefit of access to design that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford or even realize that they need. And I would maybe draw attention here to the sort of that maybe design and healing and design and dignity are 2 sides of the same coin. So it's really, we talk about doing things with people, not to them. It's sort of at the core of what we do. And I've been working all semester to get the students to say we instead of I, and they're almost there. You know, when they're talking about, even if it's their work, they're saying, we did this, we did this. So about a month ago, I showed up on a foggy day with 2 van loads of students. For 2.5 days, we spent time in Sewanee, got tours. And Chase, if you could make sure there's no sound on this one. Perfect, thanks. I'm just gonna talk while this plays. So we spent 2.5 days kind of in residence with the group. Woody and his colleague Tiffany Moman took us around, introduced us to the sort of histories, both the white and the black histories of Sewanee. We did what we do. We sort of listened, took pictures, students sketched as they went. We visited buildings. We heard about kind of the ways that architecture memorializes, often in this context, memorializing the Lost Cause and the Confederacy and those kinds of things. And then we sort of visited the cemetery and saw the sort of segregated sort of white and black cemetery and sort of went on a tour of the St. Mark's community. I'll never look at divots of leaves the same way again. And then we spent the sort of a day and an evening meeting with members of the community, Jimbo and some of the folks you've already heard about, sort of really getting to know them. They brought photo albums and those kinds of sort of artifacts of memory. And the students, spent 2.5 hours sort of one night, and each community member sort of shared their thoughts about Sewanee in the way that Evelyn just did, and she was one of the members who participated. A few of the community folks said, I'm adopting this group of students. You know, they sort of took us in and have been really generous. You know, and this is the kind of work you have to kind of bring the work to people that's at the core of this project and what we're trying to do. And then the next day we sat down with big pieces of paper and just started to capture what we had through words, through diagrams, not really sort of designing the memorial. That will come with a whole different group of students in the fall, as Woody and Laura said. But this was just kind of laying the groundwork. And we think by drawing. You know, I can take about 32 seconds talking with someone before I have to start moving a pen around, just because it's a way of sort of understanding and explaining things. And we toured architecture on campus. That's Savannah, sketching sort of on site. So we travel with our sketchbooks and sort of travel and taking things in that way is really important to what we do. So this is some of the things that have come out of it. And these aren't as beautiful as Laura's studies and the kind of mapping exercises and those things that you just saw. But, you know, this first one was, what did we hear from people? And we were struck by, everyone speaks about in the community, says their name and then says who their parents were and what their parents did as a job. So this question of sort of the relationship of of your family, the work that you sort of did in the community, often hidden or sort of underappreciated or erased at this point. So sort of collecting these things and starting to take that and turn it into other kinds of words. What might a classroom, what might this site, what might this place be? I'll creatively disagree with Laura because I think you don't have to have rooms on a wall for there to be something there to work with, right? Because a ground is a place to work with and trees and all of that. So, but interior design, I understand. I know Laura agrees with me. You know, this idea that you can make the world that you want to live in. Yeah. And then sometimes to sort of create action words that help with design. This is another way of sort of putting things forward. To activate, to listen, to summon, to trace histories, to praise, to resist, to repair. You know, these are all maybe aspirational goals for certainly for the project, and they come out of listening to folks. Just a few others. So this is the students just trying to start to connect the dots on things. What is a classroom? Well, it's about students, but it's got to be flexible. And there's a trail nearby. Can it also be a museum? It should be shady and breezy. It should be safe. It's a place to learn. Maybe 25 people go there. So it's a mix of like qualitative, experiential things, as well as the quantitative kind of nuts and bolts. It's a place for dialogue and diverse opinions. It's a real place with a sense of identity. Safe haven. We heard that over and over again. Sewanee was this sort of place that felt safe, even in a segregated society. And then things start to look like little drawings and people and things. We heard about community and family and music and food. So all of this is maybe akin to the kind of Liz and Maya and Issa's big sloppy desk, right? It's sort of a snapshot here of a process of design in the middle of the process. I thought I'd just finish, not by talking, but I was sort of collecting words as the community members were speaking with the students that night we were there back in February. And then I asked my students to reflect on their sort of about a month later, sort of on their time in Sewanee. And all I did was take and put a community member, sort of something they said with something that the student sort of reflected on. And they kind of loosely paired them, but I think there's something, maybe this idea of dialogue, and maybe a third sort of design is healing, design is dignity, design is dialogue. So I'll just sort of click through these and you guys can see how some of these things. So the orange is community and the black text is students. That's my time. Thanks.
So we'd be happy to respond to any questions or thoughts you might have about what we have introduced this morning. Thank you all. Okay. I think they're going to pass around some microphones. And Evelyn, I think, is still on here to answer questions. No? Okay.
Thank you. I'm curious about how, professors, the people, I'll put it like that, the people who are working, how the people who are working on this, project, I feel uneasy with the people who are working on this project. I feel uneasy that, it's gonna be, processed in a way that, I won't say that can be respected, but how can you, and I'm talking, race right now, how can you come up with a design, a monument, a speaking piece that would talk for another race about things? How can you do that? And I don't see that other race working in it. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Sure. Well, it's part of it is, I hope, not to deny what you're saying at all. I can understand your skepticism, but I hope that we can overcome. Well, one, our team is more diverse than it appears just from the three or four of us here. Two, we are working closely with people from the community. And we have been, this isn't the first time, we've been doing it for 8 years, close to 7 years now. And Evelyn is kind of the point person, but she's one of several people in this, rapidly diminishing community to be working with us. But I think the most important thing is the way in which we are approaching this, the process itself, which has at least the potential. We may not realize that potential, but it has at least the potential not to be what you fear or you're concerned that it will be. And Kevin, you and Laura may want to say a bit about that, about the process itself and how important conversations with the community are to what we have done so far and what we will be doing going forward.
Yeah, I can speak to that because I'm trying to teach my students who are very diverse at VCU. We're actually a minority serving institution. That design is not a self-fulfilling act, but it's a gift. And that the other thing is that the community members are designers as well. They're our partners in this. And I appreciate your question because I think it's something that we all think about. I can say also that I taught at Hampton University for 6 years, and that was a journey for me. And I ended up learning that I had some inherent biases, and I changed my style of teaching to be more receptive. And I felt like my students wanted projects that involved their history. And so I kind of grew as a designer. And so that's what I'm trying to teach my students to do. And we don't want to impose anything. And I think good designers, no matter who you are, design for humanity, and we're all human. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it.
We were speaking about this morning at breakfast, actually, about because if the design is a portion of the process, the actual, the sort of team that will then carry out the work, you know, who's going to build the project once the conceptual design work is completed, what architects and engineering and other sort of design professionals might be brought on. And this question of they should, you know, be more local. Should they, wasn't a question of should, the suggestion was, should, you know, can we engage minority-owned businesses to sort of, to be participants in that process as well? I'll second sort of Laura's comment. You're not wrong, you know, that this is, we're here at work in progress mode. This will be, it's on our mind and it is a challenge. I was struck thinking about my students who reflected, you know, we have diverse student bodies, but I was struck by when I asked the students another question to reflect on. Give me 3 words from your time in Sewanee, you know, and I got a number of the sort of remembrance, memorial, and hope. From one of my African-American students, ambition, you know, like his perspective was, you know, just in 3 words, was different and unique compared to maybe some of his whiter or sort of international peers who might be participating. So I think it's on our mind and we're sort of aware of that. You know, the challenge is to sort of bring the work to people and sort of really just, I move the pen around maybe, but somebody else is kind of directing. But thank you for sort of lifting it up, because it is something we think about and talk about, and it does look a little like, you know, 3 white people talking to you about the design for a Black memorial.
Well, I didn't mean to belittle it or narrow it.
No, I don't think any of us are taking it that way. I certainly am
I'm
not.
just thinking, and I can't remember his name.
Me?
Professor
Oh, Laura?
Laura, when you just mentioned, did you say Hampton University? That you taught at Hampton University. Well, I came in, so I'm closer in than I was because you learned something while you were there. And, you know, like you said, innate biases came out and so forth. But look at it. Guess who taught you how to, or what you needed, or what was missing? The very people that we're talking about making this monument for.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So you have to have, it seems to me that you have to have the race piece be not aggressive or whatever, but be a part of it for it to be real and for it to be true and as effective as it could be.
Sure.
Mhm.
Another thing we're going to try to do is get real feedback from the community members. And what I mean by that is we want them to challenge us and our assumptions. We want them to come back and say, you've got this wrong.
Mhm.
So I'm preparing my students for that because again, as a designer, it's not about us.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it is absolutely, has to be part of our process going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. So I have a follow-up kind of to what you just shared as well. So I'm thinking about positionality, right? And you all being researchers, but not only you all, thinking about the students as well. So I wonder, how are the students and you as well considering your own positionality in the approach to the work and ensuring that it remains a people-centered approach with the community and by the community as well as for the community? And then in addition to that, how are you ensuring that you continue to challenge those inherent biases that you mentioned?
Well, let me start just to dwell on the preposition. This is not for the community. This is with the project is with the community. We're there to follow their lead, not to show them the way. So we are very conscious that in our community in particular, and you're hardly unique in this regard, there has been a lot done for many generations for the Black people of our community. but very little done with the consent or with the consultation of them. We have a long history of injurious, harmful, destructive paternalism in our community, and the people with roots in the Black neighborhood are familiar with this. They know it. So we are conscious and not having that approach, and to be aware, as you say, to be more aware and attentive to the play of unconscious biases. So I haven't talked much about what our students are doing, but I'll defer to my partners here, and they can talk about this in relation to their own students.
Well, one thing I can talk a little bit about is that the people of St. Mark's are teaching us. I don't know if you remember, but there was a set of slides that are tiles that a student did, and at the end, she had cut out an image of Dr. Roberson. And she basically said that he was a spark, he was an inspiration, he was the start of this. And I know that Woody learned some things he would never know if he hadn't had that relationship with Dr. Roberson. And so I say that because we're taking an approach of being the students and learning from the people of St. Mark's. I also just want to say what we do bring them is if you think about design, I have always loved design, and what I love is that it can inspire. So part of what we're trying to do is to inspire St. Mark's to think big. That they can imagine anything they want for this project, and we will facilitate.
Find a way.
Maybe supplement that by speaking a little bit about the process we anticipate for the fall, which I think gets to your question you asked about sort of before, during, and after the process. I don't remember the exact words. Something, right, you were asking about sort of how do we make sure that we don't show up once and then come back and hand them. So have planned out kind of a robust sort of, you go down and with no preconceived notions. The first step is to sort of listen. We're planning to spend the better part of a week sort of in residence, working with the community, listen, draw, talk to them, draw, go back to our desks, start to put things together, come back again, share out ideas, listen to feedback. The professor's job, at least I see my job in those moments, is to give everyone permission to sort of say you don't like something, and sort of encourage the kinds of feedback that is most useful, because people are often very polite and kind to students in particular, sort of engaging with them. So we've got sort of 3 to 4 checkpoints in a 15-week time frame. That's about bringing the work sort of back to folks, sitting with them, getting feedback, then sort of making adjustments. So it's the sort of, they are the clients. You go and you talk to sort of the clients, right, as much as possible to make the project for them. So it's built into our design process. The thing I love about being a designer is constantly being challenged. I don't know what your experience with 20-ish-year-old folks is. They hold us all. I'm being held accountable for, Kevin, the world's a crap show. How can we make it better? Why are you doing that? Like, they ask sharp questions. They want their work to have impact. So I feel that I'm being held accountable to my students as well as to the community and the Roberson team in that way, to sort of be a constant check, and back to sort of the question of bias and those kinds of things. I've been working with communities of color as well as maybe communities with similar, maybe underserved challenges in rural areas, sort of white and Black, and have learned over the years, I hope, and I get better each time, and keep working on it, to sort of how to speak to people, to bring the work sort of to them, and do it with them. So I think we've got these sort of, the idea is to sort of constantly be, maybe to the point of like, oh my God, leave me alone, please, if you're in the community, like asking and bringing things back. And I think, you know, the things we use are designed to be engaging and invite participation. So to sit and to draw, to collect information, to build a model that people can play with, and sort of pick up and start to inhabit. So the kind of visual, the ways of working, the sort of act of making and making things visual. That was something I wrote from this morning's video, was about that there was real power in visualizing, you know, kind of the future. And that's maybe the superpower of designers and architects, is to sort of make visual these kinds of ideas. But it's not our ideas. Again, it's sort of the ideas of the community. So it's at these checkpoints and actually sort of leaving the work. So you go present the work, it stays in the community center where people can engage it while we're not there, formulate questions, send emails, text Woody and say, what is this thing going on? Then so there's sort of a robust sharing that hopefully works to sort of understand our positioning relative to those things. Thanks.
I do really appreciate your question, because I'm sitting here thinking that we need to be fully transparent and we need to actually talk about it. We need to talk about race in a way that is very honest, because you're absolutely right. Unless if we don't talk about it, then will the project truly be a success? So I look forward to, when we get into the project more, having those kinds of discussions with the community.
My question is about the term that I heard, the bottom. How did it get that? Is that because of geographic features? And also, what's the relationship between the bottom and St. Mark's?
So it is a geographic reference. So the Sewanee is on top of a plateau, sometimes called tableland, but it's anything but a flat table up there. And there are highland and lowland up there, and the lowland tends to be wetter than the highland, and the highland tends to be wider than the lowland. So African Americans were pushed to live in the areas that were least desirable. So the bottom land along a creek. This neighborhood was also called Happy Hollow by white people. It was called Happy Hollow, Negro Town, Graveyard Town. There are a number of other references to it. What we've discovered through our historical research is that the people who lived in these areas of town called it Sewanee. They didn't even recognize some of these other references. So they claimed a membership in this community that white people didn't recognize. It came by the name St. Mark's because there was an Episcopal mission church built there to serve the African American neighborhoods, St. Mark's Mission Church. And it really acquired the St. Mark's name from, again, the white leadership in the community who were seeking to give it a more positive designation than Happy Hollow. This is in the 1980s. So we don't know what is, there are many different ways, different names for the area. But what we do know is that it was segregated. It had almost no public services, no utilities until the early 1960s, dirt roads that were not even named, etc. But it was Sewanee to these people and the people who lived there. So it was a place of value and of community. And that's part of the story that we're trying to tell.
Thank you, Woody and Laura and Kevin and Evelyn, if you're still online, for a wonderful presentation. Of course, Sewanee is one of my other homes. And so Woody says the year I was there was the best year of my life, but it was a very good year of my life. Anyway, I'm going to thank you and invite you all. Lunch I see is here. I see people coming in with boxes, so you can grab